Chapter 581. Does anyone have potions? Quick. I panicked when I felt Small Snake's body and his heartbeat weakening. Feeling his body, which was extremely hot, I knew that the situation was extremely bad. Not today. Pressing my hands against his chest, I started to move my body up and down as I tried to get the blood running through his body. I was currently waiting for someone to give me a potion. Only a potion could save Small Snake. Quick. I shouted out loud as I noticed Small Snake's condition worsening. Here. Thankfully, Amanda was quick to react as she handed me what seemed to be a small potion. As I was in a hurry, I didn't get a proper look at the potion, but feeling the texture of the bottle, I knew that it was a really expensive one. I was secretly thankful inside my heart. Pressing my hand against Small Snake's mouth and opening it up slightly, I gently poured the contents of the bottle into his mouth. Watching as the liquid poured into his mouth, I could feel sweat trickling down from the side of my face. Please work. For the first time in my life, I felt genuine panic as I waited for the potion to take effect. I wasn't the only one panicking as Ryan shook Small Snake's body and moved closer to him. Tears had started to gather from the corner of his eyes as he hugged Small Snake's body tightly. Please don't die, please don't die, please don't die. His voice was rather frail, evident that he was also in a similar state to mine. Behind him, the others were also showing similar reactions as they anxiously stared at Small Snake's body on the ground. Done. Throwing the now empty bottle away, I slumped back and gazed in Small Snake's direction. Please work. I thought to myself as I suddenly felt something press against my forehead, wiping some of the sweat away. Thank you. Upon noticing Amanda standing beside me, I thanked her for wiping away the sweat on my side of the face. It'll be okay. You've already done everything you can for him. All you can do at this moment is hope that he recovers. She quietly reassured me as I felt her soft hand grasp mine. Whew. I wasn't sure whether it was because of her sudden actions or her calm demeanor, but I slowly also started to calm down as I gratefully looked at Amanda. Thank you. I once again thanked her as I shifted my attention back to Small Snake. She's right, I've already done whatever I could for Small Snake. It will be up to him from this point forward. Given that the potion Amanda had given me was a highly ranked one, I expected its effects to be rather quick. But as minutes passed and Small Snake's condition didn't improve, my complexion started to sour. Did it not work? I weakly mumbled out loud as my head lowered. My hand grasped at my clothes as a familiar pain engulfed my chest. I couldn't quite describe what I was feeling, but it felt as though all the energy had been taken away from my body. The latest episodes are on website. Shit. I cursed out loud as I felt guilt creep up into my body. How could I have let this happen? I should have refused Kevin's offer once I realized that something wrong was going on with the system. Had I been more cautious, none of this would have happened. If there was anyone to blame, it had to be me. Given all the experiences I had, I should have known better to be more prepared. But my sudden actions had prompted this mistake to happen. I knew that I was being harsh on myself and that my faults lied elsewhere, but these thoughts never stopped appearing inside my mind. In fact, they were getting progressively worse as time passed. Small Snake. But it was right then that Ryan's high-pitched voice rang in the room and my head snapped upwards. What happened? Immediately turning my attention towards Small Snake, the first thing I noticed was his twitching eyelids. Move away. Upon noticing this, I moved over to Small Snake and placed my hand against his neck and tried to feel his pulse. It's working. Noticing that his heartbeat was slowly becoming stronger by the second, all the previous pain that I had experienced dissipated and I felt a wave of relief enshroud my body as my shoulders relaxed and I slumped back on the ground. Thank God, thank God. I quietly mumbled to myself as the others also showed similar reactions to mine. Especially Ryan, who hugged his body and quietly wept. Hugging onto his chest tightly, he murmured, Thank you, thank you. I felt a weird feeling as I stared at Ryan hugging Small Snake's body. With everything that has happened, the two of them must have developed a really close bond. Just the look of utter pain on Ryan's face was an indication of how much he cared for Small Snake. It wasn't just him but the others as well, and taking a moment to study the faces of everyone present did I finally realize just how much of an influence Small Snake had on the lives of each and everyone in the mercenary group. Thank God. I mumbled again as I slowly stood up and headed out of the room. Where are you going? Kevin asked as he followed me from behind. Secretly wiping the corner of my eyes, I turned to look in his direction and beckoned Angelica to follow me. Although I want to spend more time with Small Snake, I know that there isn't much time left. We should free the others now. You're right. Kevin nodded his head as his face turned resolute. Pointing towards 3 particular rooms, I looked at Angelica. That's the room where Jean is located, that one is where Emma is located, and that's where Han Yufei is located. Do me a favor and open them up for me. Shifting her gaze to face me, Angelica didn't say anything for a couple of seconds. Just as I was about to say something, she nodded her head. Okay. After that, she headed toward Emma's room. The reason for this was Kevin, who was standing next to it, waiting for Angelica to come to him. On the outside, he appeared to be patiently waiting for her, but as I noticed the hurried taps of his foot and his shifting eyes, I knew that he was anything but patient. As expected of him. Visit for a better user experience. I shook my head as I imprinted the scene inside of my mind. He never changes. Drip. Drip. 10:35. 10:36. While sweat dripped down her face, Emma performed a series of push-ups. Her auburn-colored hair, which now reached all the way toward her back, gently fell in front of her face, covering her eyes. Nonetheless, this did not stop her as she continued doing push-ups on the floor. 10:37. 10:38. Ever since she had appeared in this strange environment, Emma never once found herself out of place. Rather, she felt a lot more relaxed than back when she was inside her family dungeon. Compared to that place, this place was like heaven. And even though her mana was currently sealed, it didn't stop Emma from continuing to train her body. As Dad said, the stronger one's body, the quicker their strength will rise. The principle was rather simple. The stronger and more well-trained a body was, the more mana it could withstand, hence the faster the rank up. It was something that was quite well known and even taught at the lock. In spite of that, no one really paid a lot of attention to this, as a lot of time was also required to train the body, and the little improvement they would receive from a better body would easily be surpassed by those that only focused on ranking up normally. That was also what Emma did in the past. Just like most people around the world, Emma also believed that training the body was a waste of time, but as she continued to do push-ups and she felt her muscles contracting, Emma realized how naive her previous view was. It's like building a foundation for a building. The stronger the structure at the bottom is, the safer and more durable the building will be. Thinking this far, she lowered her body and continued her routine. 10:45, 10:46, HM? Cree. Halfway through her push-up, Emma heard a familiar rock grating sound and stopped doing whatever she was doing. Isn't it a bit too early for them to open the door? Last she recalled, the door would open every day at a specific time. She had only just returned to her room and now the door was opening up again? What exactly was going on? Ugh. Slowly, light began to spill in, and Emma felt a wave of warm and humid air enter the room. Not used to the light, Emma was forced to close her eyes. Emma. But it was right at that moment that she heard a familiar voice coming from the opposite end of the room. She instantly recognized the voice. It was Kevin's. The person that she had been longing to see for a very long time. How long has it been since I last saw him? A year. Half a year. Her single-minded focus on her strength had made her lose track of time. The thought of how she had held back others in the past angered her beyond words, as she pushed herself every day in order to not be weak again. Visit for a better user experience. Therefore, after finally hearing Kevin's voice once again after so long, her emotions were in a state of disarray. But, rather than immediately jumping up with joy, her brows furrowed. Kevin. She spoke out loud. It's me. Kevin's voice echoed out once again. Hearing the sound of footsteps heading her way, Melissa moved back a bit. Don't come near me. Kevin's surprised and borderline hurt voice rang out as his feet came to a pause. What's wrong? Kevin asked with concern. Do you not want to see me? No, not that. Emma shook her head and massaged her eyes, trying to adjust them to the light. In the end, in spite of her efforts, she was still forced to close them. She needed more time. The reason why I'm telling you to back off is because I can't trust anything. Who can tell that you're an imposter and this is some sort of dream spell placed on me by one of the demons? Realization soon dawned upon Kevin and he emitted a sound. He finally understood why Emma was behaving the way that she was. Alright, ask me anything that you want, I'll answer you and prove to you that I'm really Kevin. Emma nodded her head. She lowered her head and thought to herself. For the next couple of seconds she didn't say anything as she carefully thought of her question. Something that only Kevin and a few people would know. It didn't take long for her to finally come up with a question as her head snapped up. Figure it out? Yes. Emma nodded her head. Alright, ask away. Sure. Taking a deep breath she asked. What is the nickname that? Oh, for fuck's sake. Her sentence was cut off by Kevin's loud curse. Chapter 582. Terror. Opening his eyes, Gene turned to face the door. Slowly, he stood up as a frown emerged on his brows. Did something happen? He wondered to himself as the light began to spill into the room and the doors slowly started to open. It didn't take long for the doors to open, and given that Gene had no trouble with the light as his eyes were instantly able to adjust themselves to the sudden shift in lighting, he was able to see who was behind the doors. Kevin. And he was surprised to see Kevin standing on the other side of the door. He had a rather gloomy look on his face at the moment. Hey. Kevin lazily waved at Gene. How did you come here? Gene asked as he looked behind Kevin and noticed Ren and a couple of other familiar figures. Amanda? Emma? What was going on? How come everyone was here? Something about the situation was off-putting. Turning his head to gaze in Kevin's direction, he was met by his fierce glare. I know what you're about to ask, and so I'm telling you now to keep those thoughts to yourself. Gene raised his brow. What did I do? Taken aback by Kevin's sudden aggressive stance, Gene looked toward the others who shook their heads. What happened to him? Not once had he ever seen Kevin this fierce. The Kevin he knew was different. He was more naive and a bit of a pushover. What prompted the sudden change? Hurry up and get out. Jolting Gene out of his thoughts was Ren's voice as he urged him to get out of the room. Though not exactly pleased with Ren's tone, Gene did as he asked and walked out of the room. It was then that he noticed that there were even more people waiting behind. What's going on? His confusion only grew as his eyes paused on them and he turned to look at Ren. Are they? It's a long story. Ren waved his hand, signaling him to let go of the topic. We don't have much time to talk right now. Turning to face the distance, he raised his voice. Are you done, Melissa? Shut up. He was met with a crisp voice. There was a noticeable annoyance in the voice as Gene immediately recognized whom the voice belonged to. Melissa. Gene thought. His thoughts were rather complicated as he thought about her. He clearly remembered chasing after her in the past, but now that he had grown up he found himself distancing from her. Do I still like her? Staring at Melissa's approaching figure, Gene eventually shook his head. It doesn't seem like it. His heart no longer seemed to beat like in the past whenever he saw her. Rather, it was as calm as a well. Gene realized that perhaps his attraction to Melissa was superficial, as he was only interested in her because of her father's connections. He had long been obsessed with making the Starlight Guild the #1 clan in the human domain, and there was no better way to accomplish that than by seducing Melissa, the daughter of the top hero. Well, that was how he thought about it in the past. He no longer felt the same way. How disgusting. Thinking back at his past actions, Gene felt shame rise from deep within him as he avoided making contact with Melissa. Thinking of his past actions, he no longer knew how to react to her comfortably. So, have you figured out a way to get rid of the effects of the mana sealing effect? Nope. Melissa flatly replied to Ren's question. This is a task that's a lot more difficult than I previously thought. It might take longer than I originally thought. Tapping on her glasses, she tilted her head and closely examined what looked like a test tube in her hands. What seems to be the problem? Ren asked as he moved beside her. Raising her head, she dismissively looked at him. You wouldn't get it. Why? Are you some sort of scientist? No. That's your answer. Still doesn't change the fact that I might be able to help. You. Melissa suddenly scoffed. Please do tell me how you are able to count the number of cells that are being attacked by the mixture and forcing your blood to stop carrying mana? Extending her hand, she handed Rin her glasses and the test tube. The glasses will be able to help you zoom into the blood cells, and from there you can count yourself. See if you can do it quickly. Crossing her arms, she no longer paid any attention to Rin, who quietly put the glasses on and tapped onto them. A bright light shot from the middle of the glasses before scanning the whole test tube. It shouldn't be too hard. Ren quietly mumbled as he closely examined the test tube. While everyone was doing their thing, Jean suddenly took notice of Ren's eyes, which suddenly dilated extremely fast. Aside from that, he also observed green veins coming out of his face as it began to redden. He looked exactly like someone that was forcing blood into their head by force. What in the world is he doing? Jean wondered to himself as he closely examined Ren. His condition didn't last for long as he soon took the glasses off and handed Melissa the glasses back. Done. She stared at him with a small smirk on her face. As you can see, it's a lot more difficult to figure out then. There's exactly 8,097,564 different organisms attached to the red blood cells inside of the tube, of which 3,672,972 are of blue color. Visit for the best no_underscreen experience. A baffled look spread across Melissa's face as he looked at Ren with a strange look. You're kidding, right? Incredulous, Melissa unfolded a small piece of paper from her dimensional space. Her face paled as she unfolded the paper and stared at its contents. She then robotically turned to look at Ren. How is this possible? She mumbled out loud as the paper in her hand fell to the ground. It was there that Jean was able to catch a glimpse of what was written. Overall sample size equals 4 millimeters. Estimate count per mm of blood equals 2,001. 302,356, 567 1,987,931 2,012,830. Estimate count per 4 millimeters of blood equals 8,358, 628. The numbers are close. Upon closer inspection and recalling Ren's numbers, Jean was surprised to find that they matched Melissa's estimates. At least the ones that were written on the paper. Did he really calculate all of that in the little time that elapsed? But how was that possible? It shouldn't be possible. Jean tried to convince himself. But as he took notice of Melissa's expression, he knew that Ren was probably right. Answer me, how did you figure this out? Did you take a peek at my list and come out with some random number that is close to it? I'll have you know that if it's a joke, it might make the situation worse. Don't worry about it. Bending down, Ren picked up the paper and handed it back to Melissa. He then pointed toward his head. You see, I've got a little something inside of my head. Finding something like this is like child's play for me, so you don't have to worry about whether I'm right or wrong. I wouldn't try to harm myself. Right? Still baffled by Ren's words, Melissa seemed at a loss for words. She rigidly moved her head and headed back toward one of the distance rooms. Was it Ren's room? Jean wasn't exactly sure, but it seemed like it. Give me 2 minutes, I'll have the solution ready for you then. Bang! A figure crashed against the side of the wall, creating a small crater. The figure then slid down and the dust in the air cleared, revealing Liam's features. Cuff was strong. Liam felt his whole body ache as a palpitating pressure completely enveloped his body, making his movements extremely rigid. He stared at the demon levitating opposite him. So this is how strong a Duke-ranked demon is. Wait, no. Slowly he stood up, letting the pieces of rock that had been to him fall to the ground. Squinting his eyes, he took a closer look at the demon, and it was then that he noticed that his aura was rather weak. Channeling his mana toward his eyes, everything became more clear to him as he opened his mouth and spoke. You're dying. A deep silence permeated throughout the room as the Duke-ranked demon froze on the spot. Soon, his face changed completely as he looked at the little remaining demons in the room. They weren't exactly strong, but that was beside the point. News of his eventual death couldn't spread. It would only serve to incite the other demons to try to take over his position. What sort of nonsense are you saying? His powerful voice shook the surroundings, and the pressure bearing down on Liam increased. Ugh. His knees buckled as a groan escaped from his mouth. Liam knew that he had hit the nail on the head and that he had successfully enraged the Duke-ranked demon. Nonetheless, perfectly knowing that he had angered him, Liam continued. You can try to hide it from the others, but you can't hide it from me. I see everything. His eyes suddenly became brighter and he took a step forward. Right about now, you should already be close to running out of demonic energy. Shut up. With a flap of his wings, the demons vanished from the spot and arrived before Liam. His speed was so fast that Liam was barely able to move his sword in a way that it protected his heart, the spot at which the demon was aiming for. Clay. A metallic ring echoed in the air, and Liam's body was once again sent skidding all the way toward the distant wall before he crashed. Bang! The impact knocked the wind out of Liam as he fell on both knees to the ground. Clenching the ground with both hands, a smile spread across his face. So fun. Liam seemed to have taken no notice of the condition of his body. All he could think about at the moment was the strength of the attack that had just landed on him. The prospect of meeting someone so powerful excited him to no end. Especially since Liam realized something. He is beatable. Rotating his shoulders, he once again stood up. But just as he stood up, he suddenly noticed that one of his legs was twisted at a weird angle. His leg was broken. Oh. Within moments of realizing what had happened to his leg, the Duke-ranked demon appeared next to him. From that moment, time seemed to have slowed down for Liam as he caught sight of the demon's sharp nail head straight for his eyes. Oh shit. Crisis suddenly rose from deep within him as lightning began to crackle all over his body and he moved his head, trying to avoid the demon's claws. Just as he moved his head, he suddenly noticed the demon's hand following him, and the sense of doom increased significantly. However, it was then that something happened. It all happened within seconds. By the time the demon's claws were near Liam's face, Liam caught sight of what seemed to be a bright light and the demon's figure was instantly thrown back, before skidding a couple of meters back. Click. What followed after the crash was a familiar clicking sound, coupled with a familiar voice. Looks like I'm not too late, no? Turning his head, Liam caught sight of a familiar figure. A thin smile spread across his face. Sitting back down on the ground, he took out an apple and bit into it. Crunch. Just a little. Chapter 583. Looks like I'm not too late, no? Brushing my hair back, I moved to where Liam was. In my right hand was a small silver sword. It was a spare sword that Kevin had handed me before separating from me. Just a little. Liam's words left me speechless. Especially after he took out an apple and started to take bites out of it. While he took a bite of the apple, the juices from it spilled all over his fingers before falling onto the ground. I shook my head when I saw this. Here. I handed him a potion. I don't need it. Catching the potion, Liam threw it back to me. His actions surprised me as I blinked a couple of times, unable to fully understand why he rejected the potion when he was clearly not in a good state. Seemingly being able to read my thoughts, Liam raised his hand and showed me the apple. You see, this isn't a normal apple. Standing up, his broken foot magically started to twist and squirm. Within the span of a couple of seconds, his leg had completely healed and he lightly jumped in the air. See? I'm fine. Liam threw what remained of the apple on the floor and turned to gaze in the direction of where the demon was. I did too. Another intruder? Unfortunately, my surprise attack didn't seem to have had much of an impact on the demon, as he appeared to be completely unscathed. The situation was made worse by his apparent anger, as his face twisted savagely and a powerful force enveloped the scene. Currently, we were standing in a small hall with tall pillars supporting the ceiling. A smoky and iron-like scent lingered in the air. Not bad, not bad. The demon spat through his clenched teeth as he alternated his gaze between Liam and I. Then, looking toward the other demons present in the room, he finally noticed something. Dead. The aura that was revolving around his body fluctuated slightly. A thin smile spread across my face when I noticed this. I was right to kill the others first. It had been quite a bit since I had arrived here, and during the time that I was here I spent my time killing all the demons that were in the room. None of the demons in the room were that strong, but they still posed a liability that could cause trouble in the middle of the fight, which was why I decided to kill them before saving Liam. The others should also be attracting the attention of the other high-ranked demons. Furthermore, having separated from the others who went for the core of the mana compressor, I knew that they would attract the attention of a marquee-ranked demon, and in turn stop any reinforcements from coming to the Duke's aid. Not that he really needed any since he was already a lot stronger than Liam and I. Where is everyone? My decision proved to be the correct one as the Duke-ranked demon seemed taken aback by the sudden situation. And it was right at this moment that I exchanged glances with Liam. Let's go. We understood what our task was even before we spoke as mana erupted from my body and a dark shadow appeared beside me. Shadow Servant. Taking a step forward, a black disc formed beneath my feet and I propelled my body forward. Crackle. Crackle. At the same time, lighting crackled around Liam's body, and his figure vanished from the spot, before reappearing right in front of the Duke-ranked demons. Extending his hand, he slashed toward the demon. Shying. I, on the other hand, pressed my hand against the hilt of my sword. First movement of the keiki style. Quick slash. Click. A bright white light followed a clicking sound as mine and Liam's attack landed simultaneously on the Duke-ranked demon. Clay. Clay. But much to the disappointment of Liam and I, the only thing we heard after our attacks landed was a strong metallic sound. Once the flash of light disappeared, I was shocked to see the Duke-ranked demon blocking both of our attacks with just an arm. Or to be more precise, his bones, as he didn't seem to have any muscles in his body. What do you think you're doing? His sinister and aged voice echoed throughout the place as his red pupils glared in our direction. A menacing and powerful pressure suddenly sprang out from his body, forcing the two of us back as the wings on his back expanded, casting a large shadow over the area we were in. Clenching his teeth, the Duke-ranked demon didn't say anything and just flapped his wings once. His figure disappeared from the spot before reappearing right in front of me. His speed was so fast that by the time I had activated Eyes of Kronos, he was already a couple of inches away from my face and closing the distance. Shit. I silently cursed to myself as my heart tightened and cold sweat dripped down my back. I should have known better not to challenge a Duke-ranked demon in spite of the fact that it was already old and almost dying. Even with its strength rapidly declining, the demon was still leagues above my level. Fucking Liam. Why in the world did he even think he could fight against a Duke-ranked demon? He was worse than Kevin when it came to being a calamity magnet. If I was careless for even 1 second, I could kiss goodbye to my life. When I was trying to figure out the way out of the situation I found myself in, I noticed what looked like a sword tip heading for the Duke's head in the midst of my thoughts. Fast. I thought as I stared at the moving sword. It had to be noted that currently time was flowing a lot slower than it was supposed to be. For the sword to be moving at the pace that it was, it could only be described as incredibly fast. When the sword was a couple of inches away from the demon's temple, I noticed the demon's eyes slowly moving towards where the sword was coming, and the demon's movements changed. He was no longer aiming to hit me, but rather he was now trying to defend himself from Liam's sudden attack. Apparently, it wasn't something he could ignore. Unfortunately, Liam's attack proved to be too fast for the demon to stop, and it soon made contact with his temple and dug into it. After deactivating Eyes of Kronos, time returned to normal and I saw the demon's body crash into one of the stone pillars. Bang. Itchy. As that happened, Liam appeared next to me as he supported his body with both knees and heavily gulped for air. What just happened? I thought to myself as I stared in Liam's direction with eyes full of incredulity. Since when has Liam become so strong? The last time that I had fought him, our strength was rather similar. However, right at this moment he seemed a lot stronger than he was since I had last fought him. You broke through. When I noticed the pressure coming from Liam's body at that moment, I realized he was now rank. Realization finally dawned on me as I just speechlessly looked at him. Last I remember, only 1 week has passed. Did he break through in that short week that we were here? How monstrous. Itchy. Yeah. Liam nodded his head before placing his sword on the floor and facing the direction of where the demon crashed. Still, I don't think it is enough. Right. Also turning to face the distance, my face turned extremely solemn at the sight of the Duke-ranked demon slowly standing up from the rubble. Visit for the best no_underfruit_g experience. Drip. Drip. With black blood spilling from the side of his face, the Duke-ranked demon extended his hand to touch his wound. Staring at the blood in his hand, I was able to catch a glimpse of his pupils dilating. I'm actually losing? His voice, which was filled with incredulity and shock, echoed throughout the surroundings. I am really losing to two figures that are much weaker than me? Lowering his hand, the demon's eyes soon turned hollow and the room froze completely. This can't be happening. The demon mumbled as his voice turned strange, and a scent of death permeated the air. Liam's face changed drastically when he saw this as he hurriedly grabbed me by the shoulder and dragged me back. Shit. He cursed out loud as he threw my body toward the other end of the room, sending me crashing against one of the walls. Bang. Awk. A painful groan escaped from my mouth as a sharp pain engulfed my back. It felt as though all the bones on my back broke. It was only a feeling though, as my body was now a lot stronger than ever. But, falling down on the floor, I raised my head, and it was then that I caught sight of the demon robotically moving his head to gaze in Liam's direction. Raising his hand, he simply swiped it in the air. The only thing I saw after that was a pool of red blood as 3 huge claw marks appeared on Liam's chest, and blood spilled in the air. Everything happened so fast that I was unable to react on time. But it wasn't over. Raising his hand again, the demon once again swiped in the air, and more blood started to spread in the air as Liam's body dropped to the ground on both knees. But Liam didn't even have time to say anything as he passed out on the ground with his head lowered. Once Liam was no longer responsive, the demon turned to face my general direction, and I met his hollow eyes that were devoid of anything. Buff, thump, buff, thump. My heart squeezed as the rhythmical sound of my heart beating echoed throughout my ears and sweat dripped down from my back. Right at this very moment, I felt my life flash before my eyes. Gulp. One wrong move and I was done for. Chapter 584. In a large and wide corridor, footsteps echoed. "Do you think it was the right idea to just let him go like that?" Kevin asked while he turned to face Amanda, who was running next to him. Before she could answer, he raised his sword and slashed toward his right. Ping. Hyuk. The body of a demon split in half. Yes. Amanda nodded. Taking out her bow, she brought the string back as 3 arrows formed on the bow. Clay. Letting go of the string, the arrows shot toward the distance and impaled 3 nearby demons. Since he's recovered his mana, he should have no trouble protecting himself, and, lowering the bow in her hand, Amanda proceeded to head deeper into the corridor. He's not exactly alone. Buff, thump, buff, thump. Feeling the demon's hollow gaze pause on me, my heartbeat started to rapidly increase and my breathing also became more difficult. My back began to sweat when the demon once again began to raise his hand. Well, shit. I thought to myself as the Duke-ranked demon slowly brought his hand down. But a figure materialized behind the demon as his hand was halfway down and attacked him from behind. Spurt. The demon began spraying black blood on the ground, and I noticed an enchanting figure standing behind him. Her hand was currently reaching out for the demon's orb that was now visible to the naked eye, through a gaping hole in his chest area. "Took you long enough," I muttered with a smile and supported my body up. Thank God our plan worked. It was clear from the moment I decided to save Liam that I would not be able to defeat a Duke-ranked demon with my current capabilities. Even if it was weakened and I had Liam's help, I still saw no way to defeat it. Thus, the latest understudies are on underfiv.website. I decided to have Angelica turn into a ring like usual, and dropped her toward one of the nearby pillars. Through communication with Liam, I was able to get Liam to push the demon toward the pillar where Angelica sat so that we could sneak attack him. That was our plan and things should have ended there, but... Bang! I suddenly saw Angelica's body being swung to the other side of the room, before crashing into one of the pillars as a loud banging sound echoed through the air. A moment later my body froze. Drip. Drip. Raising my head, all I saw was black blood spilling from the demon's chest as he held onto his core with his hand. He then pushed it into his body and his injuries started to heal rapidly. How is this possible? I thought in shock. Even after having his core exposed like that, he was able to move his body and force Angelica out of his way before hiding the core again. Opening my eyes wide, I alternated my gaze between Liam and Angelica. They were currently both still alive, but I knew that it was only a matter of time before they died. This was especially true for Liam, who was bleeding profusely and a small pool of blood formed beneath him. I knew that I had to act fast. Fortunately, I also noticed that the demon wasn't in the best condition at the moment. He was currently in a weakened state as he was healing from his injuries. Furthermore, I was also able to notice that the longer the time passed, the weaker his attacks became. I understood then that he was on the verge of death. He had clearly been fighting using the last shreds of life energy inside of his body. If I just waited 10 minutes, or maybe less, then he would without a doubt die without me needing to do anything. Unfortunately, I couldn't afford such luxury. Taking note of Angelica and Liam's condition, mana erupted from my body as I placed my hand on the sheath of my sword. "Now!" I shouted as I turned to glance at my shadow servant. Following my orders, the shadow servant pressed his hand against the hilt of a black sword, and the mana inside of my body started to rapidly deplete. after which the shadow servant's figure disappeared from the spot and reappeared right in front of the demon. The third movement of the keiki style. Void step. Bang. Appearing right in front of the demon, the shadow servant stabbed his sword right where the demon's core was. Unfortunately, in spite of the extreme speed at which he appeared and attacked, the demon didn't seem to be the slightest bit startled as he just moved a little back and avoided the attack. After which he raised his leg and kicked the shadow servant right in the abdomen area, completely severing the servant into two. He soon disappeared into thin air and the mana inside of my body rapidly halved. Visit. For the best no_fruit_shinji experience. Ugh. After letting out a small groan, I pressed my sword's hilt with my thumb and carefully took a stance. Good enough. I didn't really have anything in mind when I sent the shadow servant toward the demon. The goal was to stop it from healing and buy me enough time to accumulate enough mana to finally use my strongest move. The last and most powerful movement to date. The fifth movement of the keiki style. Space Splitter. Zero. A bright white light suddenly enveloped the surroundings as the space around the Duke-ranked demon started to crack apart. All of this happened within the span of half a second, and it wasn't long before fissures formed next to the demon, and lights began to shoot out from them, heading toward the Duke-ranked demon at incredible speeds. Hyuk. The light soon completely impaled the demon's body, and even more black blood started to spill on the floor. The demon's helpless screams echoed out. Had the demon been in the right state of mind and not as injured, he may have been able to easily avoid my attacks, but he wasn't, and it wasn't long before his figure started looking like a porcupine as a myriad of long white lights impaled his body completely. Drip. Drip. Under the demon's body, a black pool of blood formed, before the white lights impairing him scattered and he collapsed on the floor. Taking advantage of this moment, I rapidly appeared before the demon and reached out for his core. Crack. Not wanting to make the same mistake as Angelica, the moment I felt the core in my hand, I rapidly shattered it into pieces, and the demon's body stopped moving and scattered in the air in the form of fine black dust. Haw. Slumping back on my butt, I leaned back and heavily gulped for air. My chest was burning and I was currently feeling extremely lightheaded. This was a lot harder than I thought. Despite all the preparations I had made in order to handle the Duke-ranked demon, it took everything I had to kill him. It also had to be noted that I had the assistance of both Liam and Angelica along the way. That was really close. Thought to myself. Quickly turning my body, I turned to gaze in Liam's direction and forced my body up. Ugh. As I stumbled towards him, I reached my dimensional space, a feminine-looking ring, and took out the same potion I had previously given him. Since my dimensional space was currently somewhere else, I could only borrow Amanda's. Drink it. Opening Liam's mouth, I forced the potion into his mouth. Compared to the time I fed Small Snake, I was a lot harsher. The latest understudies are on underfood.website. Itihaha. Only once the potion emptied did I finally slump to the ground and stared at the ceiling. Looking at the ceiling of the room, I suddenly heard footsteps heading my way. I didn't need to look to know who they belonged to. Angelica, are you okay? Yeah. Angelica replied while walking up to me. Soon her face came into my vision and she spoke. We should get going. I believe the others are going to soon reach the core of the mana compressor. You're right. Chugging down a potion and feeling the mana inside of my body replenish, alongside the injuries of my body which were quickly healing, I weakly stood up and grabbed Liam's passed-out body before placing him on my shoulder. Cough. Let's get going. Taking a look around the room and seeing that there was nothing else left inside, I headed toward one of the nearby corridors. I want to get out of here as fast as possible. In spite of the fact that the Duke-ranked demon here had already been killed, I still didn't feel safe. The sense of crisis that I had been feeling ever since arriving here had not once disappeared. Rather, it only increased with each passing second. I didn't exactly know what brought rise to this strange feeling, but if there was one thing that I knew, it was that I needed to trust my feelings. Whenever I chose to ignore them, something bad always tended to happen, and so, let's hurry up. Picking up my pace, I ran toward where the others were located. I really do hope this is just a feeling. A fissure formed in the middle of the sky and a figure stepped out of it. When the figure appeared, the surroundings trembled as his presence enveloped everything that lay beneath him. Is this Casaria? Taking a look at his surroundings, Magnus' eyes shifted in a certain direction. Sensing something, a smile formed on Magnus' face. Opening his mouth, he mumbled, "Interesting." After taking a step forward, his figure vanished. Chapter 585. Are we in the right place? Kevin asked as he stood behind what seemed to be a large metallic door that was at least 15 meters in height. The room they were in used to be heavily guarded by demons, but after fighting against them for the past half an hour or so, they were finally able to clear all the demons in their way and finally reach the doors that led to the mana compressor. The room was rather large but was rather dark as there were no lights lighting up the surroundings. An iron-like smell, reminiscent of that of blood, lingered in the air. Let me check. Turning her wrist and tapping on her watch, a holographic image appeared in front of Melissa. Double-checking with the image and looking around, she nodded her head. It seems like it. Okay. Kevin pressed his hand against the door and mana erupted from his body. He was currently trying to see if he could force his way through the door. As expected of an ranked mission, Kevin thought while he was checking the door. It took quite a while for Kevin to reach this place, and throughout the journey he met a lot of count-ranked demons. He didn't face a marquee-ranked demon just yet, but he knew that there was most likely going to be one soon, and the thought made him involuntarily swallow a mouthful of saliva. Can I really defeat a marquee-ranked demon? He may not have been alone as there were others with him, but with Rin and Angelica gone, Kevin didn't feel confident in defeating a marquee-ranked demon, especially since he was only rank. It wasn't exactly impossible, but it sure as heck wasn't going to be something easy to achieve. It doesn't look like the door can be opened through force. Taking his hand away from the door, Kevin looked toward the others with a complex look on his face. Then what should we do? Jean asked as he also placed his hand on the door. When he confirmed that Kevin was telling the truth, he also removed his hand from the door. We wait for Rin. Kevin replied while he sat on the ground, channeling the mana within himself. The door can only be opened through demonic energy, and since none of us here have any demonic energy, we have no choice but to wait for Rin. That's a dangerous plan. Melissa commented while pointing toward a couple of figures next to her. Particularly, she was pointing at Small Snake that was currently still in a coma. He isn't exactly in the best of conditions at the moment. Although the potion has stabilized his conditions, who knows what might happen if we suddenly get ambushed by demons, which seems to be a very likely possibility. You're right. Kevin nodded his head slightly as he crossed his arms and fell into thought. It didn't take long for him to raise his hand and stand up. Let's not wait over here. Let's move somewhere else while we wait for Rin and, watch out. Visit for a better user experience. Halfway through his sentence, Kevin suddenly felt a powerful force head for their general direction. Without a second thought, he pushed his body forward and jumped toward where the attack came from. Bang! A powerful blasting sound echoed out loud and dust swept the surroundings. Kevin! Emma shouted out loud as she stared in the direction of where Kevin had jumped. Her face was filled with worry as she looked in that direction. Fortunately, her worries proved groundless as the dust settled and she was soon able to see Kevin's figure standing tall with what appeared to be a translucent ball covering his body. Crack! Something that was resting on the top right of his shirt broke into pieces and fell onto the floor, but Kevin paid no mind to it as he glared toward a certain direction where he spotted a demon heading in their direction. The demon's calm and rhythmical footsteps echoed inside the ears of the people present as they felt their blood turn cold. This was especially so for Kevin, who felt the demon's sharp gaze pause on him. Strong. Kevin inwardly thought. A powerful aura erupted from his body and he unsheathed his sword. He wasn't the only one that reacted this way. As Amanda raised her bow, Emma raised her short swords and Jean took out his daggers. An incomparably solemn look spread across their faces as they gazed in the direction of where the demons was. It looks like a couple of humans sneaked out while something was going on downstairs. Wild demonic energy erupted from the demon's body as his sinister voice echoed through the air. Alternating his gaze between Kevin and the others, a small smile spread across his face. Especially after noticing Melissa, Hein, Ava, Small Snake and the others. Clearly they were weaker compared to Kevin and the others. This is good. The back of his wings expanded, casting a large shadow over the others. His wings then flapped, and his figure appeared right in front of Melissa. How about I start with you? Fuck off. Contrary to the demon's expectations, Melissa was quick to react. Casually flipping her middle finger at him, a transparent barrier formed in front of her, and the demon crashed against the barrier. Bang! What? An astonished look spread across the demon's face as he stared at the barrier which had not broken after his attack. Immediately, Melissa's eyes met his, and she casually threw a couple of metallic cubes at the demon. I may be weak, but I'm fucking rich. Boom. Boom. Coming into contact with the demon, the squares rapidly expanded before exploding right in front of the demon, forcing him a couple of steps back. Kate. Skidding back for several meters, the demon lowered his arms and raised his head to glare in Melissa's direction. Melissa's attack may have not exactly hurt him, but the humiliation he faced when he got pushed back by such low-ranked creature. It pissed him off. Ping. When he was about to retaliate against her, he suddenly heard the sound of air being split into two parts and realized that the sharp tip of a sword was heading his way. Quick to react, the demon avoided the sword, but... Shoo. Just as he avoided the sword, 3 translucent arrows rapidly headed in his direction. The power behind the attacks wasn't anything noteworthy, but they would still nonetheless hurt him if they landed. Thus, the marquee-ranked demon was forced to dodge the attacks. But, right as he tried to dodge the attacks, he suddenly noticed thin black threads springing out from the ground, trapping his body. They weren't exactly strong. It only took the demon a split second to free himself from the threads, but that split second was enough to let the arrows reach him. Bang. 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 The demon was forced to block the attack with his arm, and his body once again got pushed back several steps back. Just as he thought it was over, he suddenly felt a presence appear from behind him. Shying. It was none other than Emma, who slashed the back of the demon. Her movements were extremely rapid, and once they made contact with the demon's back, blood began to spill out on the floor. Arc. Pressing her feet against the demon's back, Emma managed to swiftly push herself back before softly landing on the ground. Shing. What followed after her attack was Kevin as he once again attacked, and the same pattern repeated again. From a distance, it seemed as though the 4 of them were working perfectly together to deal damage to the demon, who seemed to be rendered increasingly helpless. Their attacks were so quick and precise that whenever the demon tried to retaliate, one of them would change their patterns and disrupt whatever the demon was doing. It was really annoying. Arg. The demon shouted out loud as a terrifying black hue sprang out from his body, sending Emma, Kevin, and Jean scattering away. The black threads that were entrapping his body completely tore apart. Turning his head to glare in Jin's direction, he extended his claws and flapped his wings. It's you. In a heartbeat, he was already in front of Jean, and before Jean even had any time to react, his figure was sent crashing against the wall. Bang. Jean. Kevin cried out as the red hue coming out from his sword rapidly expanded and he slashed toward the demon. Shoo. Right at the same time that he slashed, Amanda's arrows arrived before the demon and crashed against his body. Contrary to the earlier scene, the demon did not dodge Amanda's attack and let the arrows pierce through his body. Spurt. Black blood began to spill on the ground. Rapidly twisting his body, the demon raised his hand. Clay. His arm collided with Kevin's sword and sparks flew in the air. Yuk. In a flash, the demon reached out for Kevin's throat with his extended hand. His movements were lightning quick. Before Kevin could react, the demon's hand was already at his throat. I'm still here. A second figure emerged from the side and aimed for the demon's hand as the hand grasped Kevin's throat. The figure was none other than Emma, who swung both of her short swords. Noisy. Already expecting Emma to show up, the demon raised his foot and aimed a kick toward her head. With one fluid whipping movement, the demon's leg collided against Emma's head, and Kevin's eyes instantly turned bloodshot. Emma! He shouted through the narrow gap of the demon's hands that covered his mouth. The hue around his body expanded even more rapidly as the veins on his body protruded. His terrifying glare was directed toward the demon. I'm fine. A familiar voice suddenly interrupted Kevin's plans, and Emma appeared on the opposite side of where she used to be. Her short swords aimed directly at the hand that was grasping Kevin by the throat. Clang. Another metallic sound rang out, but this time, as the demon had been caught off guard, What accompanied the sound were traces of black blood as a long scar traced over the demon's arm, and he finally let go of Kevin, who took the opportunity to distance himself from the demon. Cough, cough. Once he covered enough distance, Kevin coughed repeatedly and supported his body with the aid of his sword that was stabbed on the ground. You okay? Emma's figure appeared beside him. Turning his head to face her direction, he stared at her face, and it was then that he noticed that she was not paying attention to him. Now her attention was focused on the demon standing opposite her. She's changed. In the past, whenever such a situation occurred, Emma would drop everything and check to see if everything was okay. But unlike in the past, she now knew to not lose sight in the middle of the battlefield, as her attention was still fully drawn toward the opponent. I'm a bit jealous. Taking note of all the attention the demon was taking from Emma, Kevin wiped the side of his mouth and slowly stood up. I'm good now. Thanks for helping me out. Aiming his sword toward the demon, the red hue coming out from his body rapidly expanded, and he softly murmured, Overdrive.